Hello and a very warm welcome on November the 1st, le premiere of the month, and this is the world premiere of part 3 in our series on Hellfire. My name is Christopher Sparks and I'm the translator of the Keys of the Kingdom Holy Bible, the only awake Bible, and I have been awake for 40 years since the beginning of the 1980s when I started reading the great Russian dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn, mighty literary and political hero. At the end of Revelation 18 we read of a genocide created by sorcery, the Greek for which is pharmakia, but sorcery is a very good translation of that because it is more than just pharmakia that they are using to try and genocide us. And they are sorcerers, but the Lord is our strong tower and refuge. We need the Lord in these times. And in Matthew 24, the plagues that Jesus described, wars and rumours of wars. Rumours? Rumours saying there are wars when there aren't. Plagues, famines, droughts, earthquakes, persecutions. Well, we thought these things most likely to rise naturally, but now we know they're being caused. I'm incredibly warmed inside and encouraged and filled with the Spirit at the wonderful feedback and comments I've been getting. Thank you so much. And it's just marvellous to know that this time is producing such hunger for the real truth. You know, we're sick of mainstream institutions, because the Marxists spoke of the long march through the institutions. Well, when Jesus comes back, it's going to be a damn quick march out, and it's going to be worse than just a march out. So we are going to take over. Right, in the previous parts of this series, I spoke of the words Sheol and Hades and Gehenna. Now I've gone back and put in those words so that for each part you can know what word is being discussed, what word or words, or what topic. So in the last one it was particularly Gehenna, and we learnt that in Matthew 5:21 to 24 Jesus was first mentioning the divine law of committing murder and being liable to judgment, and then the local law of the Sanhedrin, whereby you could get in trouble for being angry with your brother and calling him names, and you could even be thrown as a criminal on the city's garbage dump. So the divine law contrasted with local law. And it's not hellfire, it's the fire of the valley of Hinnom, which was just outside Jerusalem. It's perpetually burning rubbish dump. Right, so this time the word we're going to discuss is a verb, tartaroo. And so I will put that in the link below. And now, so there are 4 words they translate as hell. Sheol, which means grave, Hades, which means grave, and Gehenna, which means the valley of Hinnom. They've got one word left, tartaroo, and it only occurs once in 2 Peter 2:4. Now, I've mentioned before that my father was a very high-class cricketer, near professional level, and played with and against internationals, such as George Headley and Harold Larwood, and David Butch White and others. My brother and I both played cricket, but we lived in his shadow as far as cricket was concerned. We did not attain to his heights, but we played all the time, and in the garden, in the hall, in the bedroom, down the rec, on the cricket pitch, at the side of the cricket pitch if there was a game on, anywhere, in the nets. Every day we could play cricket, we did. And one day my brother went to play cricket with a friend of ours, and he came back laughing his head off because having set up some stumps and done some batting and bowling. They then did some catching practice, and this friend of my brother's was not doing too well, and he started getting agitated. And my brother, Martin, he's not alive now. He was a real tease, and so he was teasing this fellow that he wasn't catching so well. And then this guy really lost his temper, and he hurled the cricket ball at Martin as hard as he possibly could. Now, this is pretty dangerous, and as he did so, he shouted in his anger, "Right, catch this, Sparks." Well, my brother stuck a hand out and caught it, and so the ultimate humiliation. Well, the guy shouldn't have lost his temper, should he? But so, now for those who love this hell teaching, love the idea that God is going to torment people for eternity, they've got one chance left, and they might be looking at 2 Peter 2:4 and hurling it at me and saying, "Right, catch this, Sparks." Well, let's see if I can stick a hand out and do what Martin did. 2 Peter 2 verse 4, starting verse 4. Now I'm going to read you from the Keys of the Kingdom and explain what the passage is exactly about, and then tell you what the King James translators made of it. Doing it that way round rather than what they said and then how it's wrong, but give you what's right first and then expose the hash they made of it. So in 2 Peter chapter 2 verses 4 to 9, Peter lists 3 events of rebellion. And the first one was a rebellion in the days of Moses, committed by Korah, Dathan and Abiram. And we can read of this in Numbers 16 and Deuteronomy 11, and we shall do. And then he mentions the world of Noah and the rebellion causing the flood. And then he mentions Lot. So 3 events of human rebellion and the judgment that it brought. And concerning these rebels in the day of Moses, Korah, Dathan and Abiram, and others, there were 250 in all, it says that God did not spare them, and he calls them sinning messengers, but in chains of darkness consigned them to being swallowed underground. But in chains of darkness, missed a line. But in chains of darkness consigned them to being swallowed underground, having been reserved for judgment. Right, so swallowed underground and sinning messengers. Now the word put as messengers is angelos, and this is the word we also translate as angels. John the Baptist was also called angelos, and other times it's used in the New Testament for humans, so it means messenger, and the angels of God in heaven are messengers, but it's also used for ordinary human men, such as in 1 Corinthians 11, the discussion on women wearing head covering, and comically in the King James it says, because of the angels, as if angels are hanging around and ogling at these women in the Christian meetings led by the apostles. But really it's because of the messengers, and it just means the men there. Quite simple, because of the men there. So that explains that myth. But here they are called by Peter sinning messengers, so sinning men, and they're in chains of darkness consigned to being swallowed underground and having been reserved for judgment. Now, how did I get from that it's about a passage in the days of Moses? Well, we need to find parallel passages. We don't have to go very far from 2 Peter. We can just turn over to the letter of Judah. Notice how the church versions change the name of the letter writer Jacob, the apostle, to James, and they change Judah to Jude. So we've got 2 patriarch named apostles writing letters, Judah and Jacob, but they change them. And it should be Judah. All right, I have to make these points as asides, but it just shows the level of how the truth has been taken away from us. I mean, how neat to have Judah and Jacob as apostles of Christ in the New Testament. Now, in the letter of Judah, we read in verse 6, and messengers who did not keep to their own original position. So messengers, these again are human men. And so it says, having deserted their habitation for a judgment of a terrible day, he has kept in perpetual chains under darkness, in the same way that Sodom and Gomorrah, etc. Well, isn't that exactly what we've got in 2 Peter? I said there that there are 3 human events. The rebellion in Moses, the rebellion in the days of Noah, and the rebellion in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. And those in the chains of darkness and reserved for judgment are here contrasted with that time of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is exactly what we get in 2 Peter. And then going on to verse 11 in the letter of Judah, woe to them, for they went off in the way of Cain. So this is all of them. And they were plunged in the delusion of the reward of Balaam, and they suffered destruction by the rebellion of Korah. Korah is the rebellion in Numbers 16. And in verse 19 it says, these are those causing disjoint, beast-like, not having the Spirit. Verse 12, these, oh yes, I meant to compare that beast-like in 2 Peter 2. Verse 12, he calls them brute beasts, destitute of reason. And going back to Jude, verse 12, these are hidden rocky reefs in your love feasts, feasting together, fearlessly gorging themselves, clouds without water, driven off course by winds, trees in autumnal decay, without fruit, twice dying, plucked up by the roots, wild waves of the sea, foaming up their own shame, wandering stars, for whom the gloom of darkness has been reserved throughout the eon. Now that darkness is death. And in 2 Peter 2 verse 12, but these as brute beasts, destitute of reason, having been born for capture and corruption, speaking evil things in which they are ignorant, will perish utterly in their corruption, being about to receive wages of unrighteousness, esteeming dissolute, living in the daytime of pleasure, stains and blemishes, revelling in their own deceivings, feasting along with you, having eyes full of an adulteress, and not ceasing from sin, beguiling unstable people, having a heart exercised in fraud, sons of curse. So you see, it's the same structure of warning. Those now, in the time they were writing those letters, feasting together, but set before them reminders of the rebellions of previous days, the rebellions of Korah, and in the days of Noah, and in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. All right, they're not in chronological order, but so what? So now, having identified that from the letter in Judah of Korah, we can have a look at Numbers 16. Now the whole chapter is about this rebellion. Korah, Dathan and Abiram. It's got their names in verse 1 of chapter 16. And they burned strange fire and suffered the consequences. So I'm not going to obviously read the whole chapter. I'm whizzing right down to verse 27. Moses has told them to stand outside their tents. So they moved from the tents of Korah, Dathan and Abiram on every side, and Dathan and Abiram came out, and they stood at the entrance of their tents, and their wives and their sons and their little children. And Moses said, "By this you will know that Yahweh has sent me to do all these works, not from my own mind. If these men die the common death of all men, or if they are visited after the visitation of all men, Yahweh has not sent me. But if Yahweh does a new thing, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them down with all that they possess, and they go down alive into the pit, then you will understand that these men have provoked Yahweh." Well, that's what they did. They provoked Yahweh. So that's the little background that Moses told them to stand outside their tents. Right, verse 31. And it came about as he... by the way, I should just say a little bit of a word about this provocation. They were grumbling at Moses, "You've brought us out here to kill us off in the wilderness. And is that a little thing that you've done?" So it really was a harsh rebellion against Moses and the magnificent deliverance through the Red Sea that the Lord provided for them. They'd seen all this. So, verse 31. And it came about as he made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground underneath them split apart, and the ground opened its mouth and swallowed them down and their houses, and all the men of Korah and all their goods. They and all that belonged to them went down alive into the pit, and the ground closed on them, and they perished from among the assembly. And all Israel who were around them fled at the cry of them, for they said, "In case the ground might swallow us down." And fire from Yahweh broke out, and it consumed the 250 men who offered incense. That's what 2 Peter 2 is about. Being swallowed underground. And the Hebrew word for swallow underground there is balag, and the Strong's Concordance reference for that is H1104. And we read a little summary of that in Deuteronomy 11:6. Moses reminding of what God did to Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, the sons of Reuben, the son of Reuben, how the ground opened its mouth and swallowed them and their households and their tents and all the living substance that was at their feet in the midst of all Israel. So you notice this word swallow down. This is exactly what we've got here in 2 Peter 2. Swallowed down, swallowed underground. That's what happened. So who got swallowed underground? Korah, Dathan and Abiram, and a total of 250 men. That's what the passage is about. They were sinning messengers, angeloi. But what does the King James make of that? It takes it totally out of context that Peter is giving a prologue of rebellions in the past by men to now rebuke rebellions in the present. And so, yes, the King James, it mentions Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot, but instead of referring to these violating sin or sinning messengers being swallowed underground in the pit, it says angels. Well, Korah, Dathan and Abiram were anything but angels. They were worthy of a very harsh judgment, Lord, not harsh, very strong judgment, and to be consigned to chains of darkness. So then when it comes to this word that is swallowed underground, the Hebrew is a verb, tartaroo. It's a verb, swallowed underground, and it's the equivalent of that balag in Numbers 16. And did I write down the Strong's Concordance number for you? No, sorry, I didn't. But it's tartaroo. It's a verb. And so the King James, instead of recognizing that these were men, sinning messengers, put sinning angels, and has them cast down to hell. It's nothing to do with any angels, any fallen angels, going into any place called hell. First of all, there is no such thing as fallen angels, and I've done videos on these already. I did one on Genesis 6, and I did one on the sons of God in Job 1 and 2. They're just God-fearing people. And the sons of God in Job 38 verse 7 is a figure of speech for stars. Nothing to do with angels, as many proclaim, because they do not understand literary devices. So this again falls apart for the people who would like to consign their enemies to a divine screeching agony, divinely assigned screeching agony in torment of flames. We get the similar word balag, the Hebrew word swallowed underground, in Isaiah 25 and 7. And he will swallow up in this mountain the face of the covering, thrown over all the peoples. In verse 8, he will swallow up death in victory. And Jonah, Yahweh provided a large fish to swallow Jonah. So this balag, it's swallowed, and it's the Hebrew equivalent of this Greek verb tartaroo, to be swallowed down, swallowed underground. And Psalm 106 verse 17 mentions this event. The ground opened and swallowed Dathan, and it overwhelmed the company of Abiram. So, the lovers of torture in hell, for others who don't agree with them, I'm afraid they have hurled a cricket ball at my face as hard as they can in anger, and like my brother Martin, I have stuck out a hand and caught it. That's it. There aren't any more words that they translate as hell. But you see how over these 3 discussions, they don't just change the words to hell, but it means the entire context of what's being written is changed. So you can't follow through the narrative. And so the ultimate really is in Luke 16, the parable of the rich man and the beggar Lazarus. And the rich man dies, and in the King James it says, I think, and in hell he lift up his eyes. And in hell, this is something that the Babylonian tradition called Abraham's bosom. as in that old rockabilly song, "Rock of my soul in the bosom of Abraham." But there ain't no such place as the bosom of Abraham. And so where the King James puts, "and in hell he lift up his eyes," the Greek word is Hades. And yet in 1 Corinthians 15:55, they've got Hades as grave. The 1 out of 11 times they got it right. But in Luke 16, they've put hell. But this is a parable. Why did the beggar man be taken up to this Abraham's bosom? Because he was poor and a beggar. That's it. Nothing about righteousness. Why did the rich man go to these torments of hell? Because he was rich. So the hypocrisy of this, because of the scribes and Pharisees, they loved their reputation, and they put burdens on men's backs, including taxes, heavy taxes. So the tax collectors were hated. And so what irony that the people who love the idea of God torturing people in screeching flames forever don't realise, well, they think that they can use this as proof passage. Here we are, Jesus describing exactly what hell's like. So people with just a small chasm between them, one of them scorching for some water, a liquid on the tip of his tongue, the other not far away and could actually bring him some water. What sort of environment is this? Because man's inheritance is on earth. And blessed are the submissive, for they will inherit the land. Psalm 37 and Matthew 5 verse 5. That's where the righteous will be. They're not going to be upstairs anywhere. Jesus is coming here. And God is coming here. I think it's Psalm 50 verse 3, our God will come. God is coming here. And in Revelation 21 and 22, God is there in the New Jerusalem, not just Jesus. So what irony that the hell merchants use this as proof. And now in the Keys of the Kingdom, I've always translated the 11 occurrences of Hades as grave, except here in Luke 16, where I transliterate it as Hades, so it's made plain that it's a mockery of these ancient myths from Homer and Ovid and so on. And I've got in front of me here 2 copies of Homer's Odyssey, 2 translations. And in one of them I found a passage in Book 11. How did you dare to make your way down to Hades, where the dead live on as phantoms, bodiless, mindless? So now that's in the middle of a fiction. So this is where all that stuff comes from. And in my other edition I found this. What book is this? Oh, this is also Book 11, the end of Book 11. These are passages I'd marked on previous readings. So this is a description. It exactly fits Luke 16 from Homer, the Odyssey, a tattered old copy I have here, by Robert Fitzgerald. Wonderful translation, my favourite. Then I saw Tantalus put to the torture. So this is a vision down in Hades. In a cool pond he stood, lapped round by water clear to the chin, and being athirst he burned to slake his dry throat with drink, though drink he would not ever again. For when the old man put his lips down to the sheet of water, it vanished round his feet, gulped underground, and black mud baked there in a wind from hell. Boughs too drooped low above him, big with fruit, pear trees, pomegranates, brilliant apples, luscious figs, and olives ripe and dark. But if he stretched out his hand for one, the wind under the dark sky tossed the bough behind him. So you see that eternal torture of not being able to dry your throat. It comes from Greek and Roman mythology. But the Christian world has taken this in to be true. Now, all this stuff and the writings of Ovid, these were loved by Christian medieval Europe. And they were translated and pilloried and reworked by Chaucer and Shakespeare and others, because they were, if you like, ready-made metaphors or ready-made myths. But when the Bible translators came along, their minds were saturated with this stuff, these stories. And so they came to these words, Sheol, Hades, Gehenna and Tartaroo. They didn't understand the passages, such as that Matthew 5. They didn't work out that it was a contrast between divine law and local law. And in Isaiah 14, they didn't work out that the king of Babylon was just being told he's brought down to the grave. They thought it must be to something else. And where the dead live on as phantoms, bodiless, mindless. That's what happened. And of course there were already hints in the 4th century Latin translation. The Inferno is written as Inferno is written as grave instead of translated for grave. So we've got this concept of Inferno. So these things were rife in those cultures. And the tribe of Edom, the Edomites, remember King Herod, the child killer, was an Edomite and employed an Edomite priesthood. Well, they would naturally have loved these Babylonian myths. And, I have to say it, some of the true Israelites as well. Now, I love it when Jesus meets Nathanael and says, a true Israelite in whom there is no guile. In other words, in those who are not true Israelites. Or there were others around who were not true Israelites, and those who were not true Israelites were full of guile. But an Israelite such as Nathanael was not full of guile. And so I would say that there were others of Judah who would have brought back from their captivity in Babylon some of this stuff. And that's probably where the Greek and Roman poets got it from as well. And the great English poet Ted Hughes, 20th century, he wrote some stories from Ovid, and they're wonderful, wonderfully well written, incredibly powerful poetry, but whether or not he viewed them as myths is a bit dubious. I think he was rather taken in by them. But he writes of medieval Europe being taken in by all these things, so he knew that much. So Jesus mocks the hell teaching in Luke 16 in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, who go respectively to hell and to Abraham's bosom, one because he's rich and one because he's poor. And the scribes and Pharisees were hypocrites, and Jesus said they were lovers of mammon. So there we have it. In part 4, so there are 2 more parts to come, I will discuss what I call the immortal worm and the mark of the beast and the lake of fire. So what are they really about? Right, if the angry hell lovers have hurled their last cricket ball at my face and I've caught it, they've run out of words, that now they're going to scramble to a few passages and see what they can make of that against me. And I think you know already how well they're going to do, because they're coping with translation, truth and internal harmony, and these are elements that they do not have. Right, thank you and thank you and thank you again for your very, very wonderful encouragements, and it really fills me with the spirit when I read these, and God bless you all richly. And in these times we need God as our high tower and strong refuge, to build us as spiritually immune and emotionally immune and physically immune. So praise be to the Lord God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Bless you all.